One, hello everyone, and welcome to What Should We Watch Tonight? This is the show where we look at cinema with one burning question: what should we watch tonight? We're going to deep dive into hidden gems, new releases, movie news. There's a lot to get into. My name is EJ.
And I'm Tony.
Tony, oh my goodness, let's get into some movie news. What a couple of weeks we've had. I mean, as our first podcast, we have a lot to get into.
Absolutely.
I
So much
mean,
is happening.
What's your background in film? Kind of give me this. What landed you here as a film critic?
Sure. Yeah, it's a bit of a story, but I'll try to keep it brief. I have been a lover of film for as far back as I can remember. I remember being 13 or 14 and buying my first DVD, which was the X-Men 1 and 2 box set, and poring over those DVDs constantly, listening to the director commentary, watching the behind-the-scenes features.
Jinkies, that director's
Didn't work out so well in the long run, but it did get me interested into movies and how they're made and kind of all the behind-the-scenes things that go into it. And smash cut to 20 years later, I started reviewing movies online on YouTube and talking about them there, and met you, of course, at a screening for, I forget which
Mission
movie.
Impossible. It was in the Dolby.
Right.
We don't really get Dolbys a lot now.
That's right, and here we are now. So
yeah, I was really happy to kind of bring you in. One, we don't have a lot of, I mean, I know what you see online, but in the local spaces, there's not a lot of like millennial voices. There's not a lot of, Spanish, Latino, Black, there's not a lot of different voices. So I really was happy to have you kind of go in, with your perspective, with your views. And I was just so happy to you came into the film world and now you're official film press screenings and everything too. It's pretty crazy. Yeah, my background is kind of similar. I went to film school though. My first DVD was Superstar.
Oh, okay.
The Molly Shannon vehicle for SNL. That really shapes our taste in movies right there. And as we will see throughout this podcast journey, how different but also how alike we are in a lot of ways. So yeah, and then I kind of went through film school, and I started in 2016 was my first official full year.
Okay.
BVS, which is right over here, was my first blockbuster.
Amazing.
And I walked out loving it, and everyone hated it, and I was just like, oh, but that was my place.
Yeah.
That's where I found out, I was like, okay, I don't want to be the defender of trash.
Right.
But I am the trash man in a lot of ways.
Wow.
Oh, I did not put my own water in here. Look at that. Not sipping anything. But no, yeah, so I'm pretty excited to get into this. So movie news. We saw 2 movies this week, which we will be reviewing. And they had a opening this weekend. Not as great as they should be. Who's the king this weekend again? King Goddamn Kong.
Yeah.
Again.
Godzilla
x Kong.
It's pretty amazing because all of, I feel like, the most recent MonsterVerse movies, the Godzilla and King Kong movies, have done fairly well, but this one seems to be really striking a nerve with a lot of the audience and has been kind of crushing it lately.
Have you seen it?
Yes.
I did not see it, and I'm a Godzilla fan. One, Adam Wingard does not like Godzilla. I love Adam Wingard as a director. Full Sail graduate. We graduated from the same film school.
Okay.
I love Adam Wingard.
Yeah.
He's a Kong fan.
Yes.
And I saw
clear.
the first movie that he did, and I was like, oh, you wanted to make a Kong movie.
Yeah.
Does this kind of have similar vibes?
Absolutely. Godzilla is on screen for maybe a handful of minutes, and it's primarily Kong's story, of course. And I think as far as the quality of the movie is concerned, it really depends on the audience that you're in, right? If you are a Godzilla or King Kong lover, if you're a diehard fan of, the most recent movies or even the older movies, and you love all the lore that comes along with it, I think that there's a lot that you're going to enjoy here. I think there are certain moments that I won't spoil, of course, where characters are introduced that are going to blow your mind if you're a diehard fan. If you're not so much and you're just someone who enjoys cinema, perhaps you saw Godzilla -1 and you really enjoyed that, this is not that kind of movie.
And I hate that kind of conversation because I've seen some people kind of hate Godzilla x Kong for not being -1. The beauty of a Godzilla fan, it's one, why I'm like a wrestling fan, why I'm a horror fan. There is your nice, big budgeted prestige.
Yes.
And then there's schlock. And this needs to exist in the ecosystem.
Right.
We need -1 and we need Godzilla x Kong. They both need to exist.
Yeah, and that's kind of the beauty of it, is that you, with this same property, have something where you can watch a movie that is an Oscar-worthy movie that has incredible acting and storytelling, and then you can also watch just a big, dumb action movie where things get blowed up real good.
31 million the second weekend. I think it's what I just saw, a 60% drop. That is pretty good for a blockbuster.
Yeah.
Usually there's a 7. Big mud, because again, you're making a lot of money the first weekend. You're not going to make that second weekend drop.
Absolutely.
Marvel movies usually deal with it. The best ones, an Endgame, there's percentage going up. I mean, I remember that Endgame box office. That was one of the craziest things I've ever seen.
Unprecedented.
Yeah, it's crazy. So yeah, this did really good, and it made the other two releases this weekend not as impressive. Monkey Man and which I don't know why we upped the projections for Monkey Man like kind of last minute.
Yeah.
It was getting. I mean, we both saw it together. We'll talk about it in a couple minutes. Our audience loved it. I can see like the reason why they were excited. I just don't know if a movie called Monkey Man starring Dev Patel is going to grab everyone early.
Yeah.
When this is on Netflix.
Oh yeah.
Or whatever streaming service this movie will end up on, it's going to be big.
Absolutely.
And I hope Dev Patel and I hope the team are like, you know, was a Monkey Paw with Universal. I hope they're breathing okay.
Yeah.
Like, you know, don't freak out.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know the exact budget for Monkey Man, but I imagine they're going to make their money back.
I hope so,
I hope so. And then if not, you know, when it goes to a streaming service like Netflix, they're definitely going to get a big audience there. I believe the release was delayed in India, which is a bit strange considering it's such an
There is
India-centric
some
film.
controversy. We'll talk about it with the political side of it, which is why Netflix was a little bit intimidated. They have a really big Indian market.
Right.
It is a political film as much as it is a religion. We'll talk about Monkey
a
Man.
lot.
There's a lot in it.
Yeah.
But I can see the India release is going to be kind of interesting. And, you know, we see that a lot with, like, Shang-Chi didn't get a China release because they don't like Simu Liu. Mulan had its issues. So, you know, China has this thing. India, you know, these cultures that we make movies in, maybe not for that market. Like, it's not a Bollywood film. It's not an Indian production. I can see when these countries are a little hesitant sometimes. And I'm never going to fault them. It's political. I don't get it. You know, I always get mad, though, when they ban, like, a movie for like an ambiguous gay kiss. Remember when like that Star Wars movie got banned in Saudi Arabia because that one 2-second kiss that was not.
Or when they don't have Chadwick Boseman on the poster unless he's wearing his mask for the Black Panther releases.
Yeah, so you see other countries sometimes not do it, and I don't agree with it. But there's other countries that I'm like, bro, this is political issues. I'm not steeping. Like I don't care. So yeah, I'm just happy to see Godzilla do well. I'm happy. Movies have been doing decent this year.
The box office is kind of thriving more than I think a lot of people thought it would be.
With one company too. It's Legendary, which is part of Warner Brothers, and it's been Dune Part 2 and Godzilla.
Absolutely.
After having a great year with Barbie last year.
Yeah.
So Warner Brothers is in a good spot, which, you know, Warner Brothers. That's a rare statement to say, is Warner Brothers is in a good spot.
It's good to see, though.
Yeah, no, you know, maybe DC will get there one day. Maybe. When Warner Brothers sells it off. So next up on our list is WrestleMania this weekend. We watched part 1 last night. Well, we didn't watch it together. I watched it vaguely. I'm actually pretty big wrestling fan. I watch AEW, the other wrestling company that exists. Why? Because it's punk rock and, you know, people bleed and are much angrier.
I've heard some things about AEW. I am not a wrestling fan, although I do enjoy watching the big events with friends, but I don't follow it closely.
And I love that WrestleMania does that. Like, WrestleMania has that thing where it's like Super Bowl. It's like that where everyone does come together for it. And I mean, last night we saw Lil Wayne was there. Though in AEW, Paul Walter Hauser showed up. In a little thing, funny actor who loves wrestling as well. So I love that, you know, wrestling is just in a moment too. We're talking about Warner Brothers. Wrestling is in a weird spot. It's not 1999.
No.
It's not there.
The Attitude Era.
But it's almost there again, where like it feels like if you're a wrestling fan, you're not embarrassed to say, you know, being a wrestling fan, being 17, I was like, nobody knows I like wrestling. This is embarrassing. And now you're like, oh, now it's cool again.
It's fun. You know, my girlfriend has gotten into wrestling, which she has not been into any kind of sport or anything like that. But I think when I told her that it's basically a soap opera aimed at, you know, men.
Yeah.
And when she kind of got that idea, I think it really clicked with her. And so it's something that really anybody can get enjoyment out of. It's, you know, you're watching people perform ridiculous stunts and, you know,
I mean, if you like a John Wick, if you like Monkey Man, I don't understand how you're not a wrestling fan, because it's I mean, it's that but live, one take.
Absolutely.
You know, and again, it's all choreographed, blah blah blah. People are gonna complain.
Yeah.
I get it, but like, it's still
incredible.
You can tell me I'm going to fall off a ladder. I can plan that. I don't want to do it. Like so, but yeah, I think the biggest thing though is Dwayne Johnson being the centerpiece of this year's WrestleMania, because I don't want to say he got booted out of Hollywood. I think we rejected him a little bit. I think audiences, critics, and, you know, when he tried to buy DC, and the hierarchy of DC never changed.
Yeah, you know, as booted out of Hollywood as you can be when you're still worth $1 billion.
Yeah, and he's going to film a movie right after WrestleMania.
Yeah, he's doing fine.
But, you know, he just fell out of favor, I guess, would be, you know, he oversaturated himself.
Absolutely.
And, you know, wrestling fans have been kind of like, great, another part-time wrestler coming in, blah, blah, blah. It's a thing, but I feel like he's finally in a character and a vibe that's very. I mean, he's not going to bring
Yeah.
douchebag Dwayne to Hollywood, but
Right.
I kind of want that. Like with that beef he had with Vin Diesel. Where was
Yeah,
this? Where was
yeah.
him being like, look at me, you people?
Well, you know, I think what it might be as far as like his lack of being in favor with a lot of the audience is that, and correct me if I'm wrong, but I feel like wrestling fans especially like an underdog.
They do.
And when you have someone who has become as iconic as The Rock is, and who is just in every movie, every summer he has some big blockbuster that he's in, and it's almost like there's an expectation there that a lot of wrestling fans and then also just people in general kind of pull away from, and then you find someone, some other wrestlers that are moving over into acting that are, whether it's Dave Bautista or
Who I think is the best.
yeah,
I think out of the best wrestler turned actor,
Yeah.
Batista, the best.
I
He's
agree.
he has a he's I like Cena. I think
Cena's another one.
so funny.
Yes.
I just saw Ricky Stenicki earlier this year on Amazon Prime. I should not have liked Ricky Stenicki. It is the most Farley Brothers movie,
Amazing.
but I liked it because Cena was great. Like he has such a charm to him.
Absolutely.
Rumor is he might show up tonight
Oh, okay.
to help Cody Rhodes in the
would
there's
be
too many people.
That would be amazing.
So we'll see. We're recording this before it happened, so
Yeah.
we'll see. But no, I like that WrestleMania kind of became the pop culture moment right now that it is. Like Twitter was blowing up over it. The Dwayne thing. I mean, all the film communities. If you're on Twitter, film updates, discussing
Yeah.
film, all these like film Twittery things
Talking
are
about
talking about
WrestleMania.
wrestling, and it's. As a nerd who has liked wrestling my entire life, I'm like, where are you guys 365 though?
Yeah.
Like, it's always this campy. It's always this over the top. Is there anything like from this WrestleMania that you saw that you're like, I would stick to, maybe want to watch more of?
You know, one of the things that really stood out to me, and this is again, is coming as someone who hasn't really followed wrestling. I watched it when I was a kid
Yeah.
back in the '90s. A lot of the most entertaining moments I felt were with a lot of the female wrestlers.
Ooh, I'm a women's wrestling
And
fan.
yeah, and to see the growth from
Yeah.
just how they're represented.
I mean, probably the last time you watched was bra and panty matches.
Yeah,
So yeah, we've evolved from that, and I think, I mean, we're now in a balance where I think we unsexualized everyone
Right.
up to a point where now we're like, you could be hot
Yeah.
and a badass, like, and
Yeah.
that's where we are. I mean, the women. I mean, Rhea Becky was a great match.
Absolutely.
And I'm a big Jade Cargill fan. She came from AEW.
Who's the one that that looks like a statue?
Storm, Jade Cargill.
Oh my
she,
God.
it was an AEW wrestler. WWE was like,
Yeah.
girl, you're coming over here.
Yeah.
She is a star. I mean, she's my pick for Aurora Monroe
Yeah.
if we're doing an X-Men movie.
Absolutely.
I mean, she's not a great actress, not a great wrestler. She's getting there. She's
Yeah.
very new though. I mean, she's from
Okay.
like basketball, you
Yeah.
know, and but yeah,
She
you
looks
saw
like
her.
She's carved out of stone.
It's insane that you see her and instantly you grab her in. Like
Yeah.
there's not a lot of, she reminds me of China back in the day, but prettier. China had the very 90s
Yeah.
muscle aesthetic where Jade's like,
Right.
no, I'm going to do it great. No, I'm glad you liked WrestleMania because it's something less toxic than our next subject.
Oh no.
Fantastic Four. Cast their Silver Surfer.
Yes.
Kind of the biggest. I mean, Fantastic Four has been kind of brewing as like the Marvel. Deadpool is in the background of it, but Fantastic Four and Deadpool really like positive the Marvel conversation
Right.
because it's not as positive as it was.
Yeah, I feel like Deadpool is something that we have an expectation of it to be good, and it's going to be pivotal in how well Marvel does over the next few years. And then with Fantastic Four, it's almost the opposite. It's almost as if our expectations are so low. And I do think, though, if Fantastic Four does well, it could be a kind of a rebirth for a lot of Marvel in the Marvel universe.
No, I think these two are really big, crucial things, but I'm not going to say that this is a negative that they did. They're falling into same tropes that internet's complaining about, and not to say that they shouldn't, but Julie Gardner, who
Right.
was an Ozark, just got cast as Silver Surfer.
Yes.
We are gender swapping a kind of an infamous role. In the comics, there is a female Silver Surfer.
Yes.
It's not an unprecedented thing. Though Marvel fans, they've never been a comic book accurate person. Never. Demon in the Bottle, Civil War, all these epic stories that they've taken, they've never adapted correctly. Marvel's just not that person.
No.
We can claim they are. DC's better at actual being like comic accurate.
Yeah, Marvel likes to take liberties.
Yes. So doing the Julie Gardner thing, I just think that opened up the conversation for the MCU, the woke left,
Oh, God.
Disney. It just opened, and I'm like, I want everyone to be able to get a job, but then I'm also like fearing for this girl.
Right.
Like, it's the same people who got cast in The Last of Us. I don't know if you know anything about that, who are in The Last of Us season 2. And I don't know if you know the story for Last of Us 2.
The game, yeah.
Yeah, it gets brutal.
Yeah.
I bless those characters who have to deal with they're going to deal with.
Right.
I'm scared for that. And so that's what I feel like those people protect them, get them off the internet. Like Julie Gardner, I'm like, I mean, I've seen that clip in the Ozark where she's, you got to kill me. I think she can take some trolls.
Yeah, yeah.
But I'm nervous. Like, I just don't want it to happen because, like, you know, and then we talked about Lakeith Stanfield was up for the role and said, thought I would be me, but I guess. So Lakeith still would have opened up a negative conversation too.
Yeah, and that's really unfortunate. You know, they always, one of the things they always talk about in Hollywood is like you never talk about the movies that you auditioned for but didn't get because somebody else got that role, and you don't want to put that energy out there into thinking that, oh, it should have been me, or what would it have been like if it was me instead. And so I think that's an unfortunate thing for him to have put out there. I know he deleted, I think it was a tweet.
Yes, yeah.
But of course you can't delete anything off the internet. It's always there. So that's really too bad. You know, I'm not going to blame him because, of course, it's natural to feel that way if you are going for a role and you don't get it. That's, you know, unfortunate. You know, as far as Marvel kind of gender swapping and going different routes with everything, it's their prerogative. It doesn't, in and of itself, mean that it's going to be any less quality than it would have been otherwise, but it does at times feel like an unnecessary poking
hurdle. Yeah, it's like poking the bear or a hurdle that you're placing in front of yourself.
Right.
That doesn't need to be there. But again, Julia Gardner's probably going to slay it. Like,
of course.
I mean, one, it is a silver alien being.
Right.
I don't particularly care about the gender of the Herald of Galactus. No. Like, one, Galactus I think is more of the crucial casting. Yes. Don't make them a cloud. You know what I mean? Like, you know, so I just think, like, you know, what do you feel about this Fantastic Four casting in general? Because nothing has been controversial. They didn't race swap any of the main characters like they did with Michael B. Jordan, who was very good in that movie and did not deserve the hate that he got. Like, again, a good example of, like, opened yourself up to it, and he proved people wrong in a bad movie.
Yeah, well, I think, you know, first and foremost, I want to say that as far as race or gender swapping, as long as it's not something that's integral to the character itself, like, for example, you would never race swap Black Panther because the whole point is that he is Black and of African descent. But when it comes to characters like Johnny Storm, you know, or the Silver Surfer, it's like their race and gender are not important to their character. Maybe you could argue that Johnny Storm's gender is
sometimes gender. That I think that does play a part, gender swapping. But again, you're gender swapping roles that like aren't key to anything. That like aren't going to like disrupt. Like if Reed Richards was then Rihanna Richards,
right?
Then you're shifting the whole story.
Then we're telling a different story.
Yes,
you know? Or like something that a lot of people have pushed for, and I wouldn't be against it, is something like Batman being Black. And that would be a completely different story, but still an interesting story nonetheless. So you can go that route. That's fine. You're just telling a different story at that point. So as far as the casting, though, for Fantastic Four, I like it. Pedro Pascal, I think, is an amazing actor. And
he's just my biggest... And I'm not a Fantastic Four super fan. He's just not Reed Richards to me. I think, one, he's very oversaturated, where I see a lot of Pedro Pascal. And I feel like I haven't seen a character of Pedro Pascal. I always see Pedro Pascal.
Yeah, and he is...
And that's not bad. Again, he's great.
Yeah.
He's like handsome, funny, he's great. I like having him around. I think he's a good actor.
Yeah.
Reed Richards, I feel like, is a very specific role, and I don't know if I can... I want to see what his transformation is, because everyone else, I can see them losing themselves, like Vanessa Kirby.
Right.
She's Kirby.
Amazing.
I don't really like, Chrissy Wake Up, what's his name?
Oh,
Joseph Quinn.
Yes.
I've only seen him in Stranger Things.
Yeah,
so
he's fine. With Pedro Pascal, though, I think that it's almost as if he's a little too charming and charismatic.
Well, yeah, but he can play a piece of poop really well. And Reed Richards is kind of supposed to be a poop.
Yeah.
So, I believe in him. It's going to take me a second to get it. It's going to take me a second with him the most, because he's one of those actors, much like a Johnny Depp. There's those actors sometimes that, like, Angelina Jolie was that for me for a while. I can only see Angelina Jolie in movies.
Right.
I just saw her, and I wasn't able to be like, oh, this is Lara Croft.
Right.
It's Angelina Jolie as, some actors have that problem.
Right.
And I think Pedro is a little bit for that. And the other one, I don't watch The Bear, so I don't know other guy who is cousin on The Bear that everyone really likes.
Yeah.
I don't know. He's going to be like a practical effect and or CGI creature. I'm not really.
No, I'm sure he'll be fine.
He's not the guy from the Shield, though.
What was Michael Chiklis?
I love Michael Chiklis. I mean, that first casting, they nailed that first Fantastic Four.
Well, almost.
Okay. It's very campy. It's very early 2000s. I think it's a fine movie. Julian McMahon, I was a Nip Tuck person. He was not my Dr. Doom.
Okay.
no one's been a good Doctor Doom. That's the Marvel struggle, because
No,
what's the
not
other
just
guy?
yet.
What's the guy who's in Planet of the Apes? Toby something.
Oh gosh, I don't even remember.
He was the one that was in the Josh Trank movie. That
Okay,
was,
yeah.
But yeah, no.
Which I saw once in theaters and never watched again.
As a movie trash lover, I tried to be like, there's something here. There was nothing. There was
There's
nothing.
not.
There was nothing. But yeah, no. All right, so that's our news section. We kind of wrapped up the biggest stories for this week. We'll kind of touch on this a little bit each time, or we'll kind of use the section to kind of play games or recap lists and things. So let's take a break, and we'll go to our next subject.
Okay.
And we're back with our next section, our movie reviews. We are both film critics. We can't really avoid movie reviews, but I think we both have a problem. Maybe not a problem.
Okay.
I do my reviews by myself. You do your reviews by yourself.
Yes.
I sometimes want to talk to people about movies on camera, and this is the section now.
Absolutely.
So we are talking about movies that usually we see together or separate, because we saw one of them together this week, and we saw one of them, well, actually two together, because next week's episode, tune in for that. We have another movie to talk about.
Yeah.
But yeah, I saw First Omen by myself this week.
Right.
With a group of critics. It was like 4:30 in the afternoon screening.
Amazing.
I double featured that and Monkey Man, which most critics did. I have a friend in Chicago. They did the same screening.
Also, a bit strange that both Monkey Man and The First Omen have the same poster.
Dude, when I put them on Letterboxd together, I was like, I need a movie in between, because this is weird. These movies are nothing like each other. Because, boy, they are nothing like each other.
Some graphic designer got double dipped on that one. It was like, oh, I've got a poster idea.
And I looked on my Letterboxd. I think there's another poster that looks exactly like it as well.
Yeah.
So I think that's just the poster of the year. It's red and black.
Yeah,
ooky
somebody
spooky.
walking through a door.
Yeah, it's good. I like First Omen a lot. I think the score, last time I checked, was in the mid-80s on Rotten Tomatoes.
Yeah.
Not what I thought for a prequel of First Omen. The Omen movie is a classic 1970s, I think early 70s, maybe 72 to 75. It's in that space.
Okay.
Before Exorcist, around Exorcist.
Right.
Because we were real satanic-y in the 70s. Late night, never mind. We'll talk about that movie in a second.
Okay.
But yeah, we're in a real satanic-y spot right now with film, very much like the 70s. And the First Omen brings you back to it. It is the most... It's not shot on film. Maybe it is. I'm not a film nerd, but it feels like it's shot on film. It feels like it's 70s. There's a lot of pans. There's a lot of zooms. There's just a lot of long takes.
Right.
Which, watching Monkey Man, I'm craving a long take by the end of this movie. Where I really like First Omen for bringing back that 70s flair. It's old school. It's slow. The first half, your atmosphere.
Right.
Second half, you're watching births. You're watching it gets a little wackadoo.
Yeah.
I loved it. I was really, really surprised. I gave it a 3.5. I'm not a letter number person, but Letterboxd kind of forces you sometimes. So I do it. I gave it like a 3.5. I thought it was really good. I thought it was, but it has that like lowered expectations. I start my review by saying that like I don't want you to go into this with lower expectations, because I'm going to give it a positive review, but go into it cautious. And I'm not going to say it's a perfect movie. It's slow. The plot is, you're kind of twiddling your thumbs a little bit, because you're kind of like, well, this is happening. Oh, you're trying to say that's not happening? It's happening.
Yeah.
So it's a little bit of that, where you're like, okay.
You already know where it's going.
And then the end is a bit Rogue One, where you're like, wow, we really have to set up the Omen.
Oh, okay.
So the whole end of the movie is just like, wow, we're really setting up the Omen, which I like. I was waiting. It's not there. I was waiting for a CGI Gregory Peck to just show up like Tarkin or Leia in the end of Rogue One and be like, hello.
Yeah.
Give me the baby. But it was really cool. I really liked it. I would suggest it to you, but I know horror is a hit or miss subject for you.
Yeah, I didn't really come up watching a lot of horror movies, so the only Omen movie I've ever seen is regrettably the 2006 remake with Liev Schreiber.
Liev Schreiber, yes, and Julia Stiles.
Which
very 2006 casting.
Was
the
not
most
great.
2000. It's not.
So yeah, I definitely don't have a lot of history with that, but I've seen a lot of positive reviews about this one, and it looks like maybe a good jumping off point for somebody who's not particularly familiar with the franchise.
Yes, but it's not a good jumping off point if you're not a horror fan. This definitely, it got a C on Cinema Score. I'm not a Cinema Score person.
Okay.
One of my favorite movies, Mother, has an F on Cinema Score.
Wow.
But again, I saw Mother. I got it.
Yeah.
I understood it. This got a C, and I just think it is a bit blasphemous. I kind of talked about it in my review. It's definitely, I can see, like, average 45-year-old woman coming off the street walking into this movie. Maybe not.
Yeah.
Horror fans, I definitely think it's for them.
Okay.
So I think that's going to be there. And for the Omen fans, it sets up there. I mean, there's a kill near the beginning that is so close to a kill from the 70s Omen that is one of the most iconic. It's a decapitation in the 70s one.
Okay.
It's so iconic, and it's so like, again, 70s film. Oh, I love the 70s.
Yeah.
That's gonna be some of my suggestions when I start giving you retro suggestions
Okay.
of horror movies. Oh, I can't wait. But yeah, First Omen, good. I recommend it. Maybe not for everyone, but I think the movie we really want to both talk about because we have vaguely differing opinions. Vaguely.
Yeah.
Let's talk about Monkey Man. What did you think?
Okay, so Monkey Man, of course, directorial debut by Dev Patel.
We love him. Dev Patel. Claps, claps, claps.
Writer, director, star, producer. I do know that initially he didn't want to direct it. I think he wanted, Chappie director Neil Blomkamp.
Well, choices.
I think he wanted him to direct.
I was a Neil Blomkamp stan for like 2 seconds.
Yeah.
District 9 had me. I was there.
Yeah.
Everything else after, no.
So he kind of like got put in the director's seat, reluctantly. And it does feel like after watching that, he has a knack for directing. I can see potential there. It definitely feels like a first-time director movie. There are, despite all of the things that I like about it, there are issues with pacing, issues with shot selection, and how they hold on different shots that are just kind of more technical errors, if I can say that, as someone who did not go to film school,
Yeah.
but who's just watched a lot of film. So it has a lot of heart to it. You can tell it's something that's very personal to him, and it's also got a ton of action. So if you are just the kind of person who's looking for that ultra-violent movie,
Yeah, and I will asterisk the violence a little bit because I do think it's earned violence.
Yes.
It is not wall-to-wall John Wick Chapter 4.
no.
Which I kind of expected it to be. And I brought my mom with my screening. She's usually my +1 for stuff. She does not like the John Wick movies. She does not want to watch a 45-minute extended fight scene. That's just not her jam.
Yeah.
So I was a little worried bringing her into Monkey Man. And the way they built up to the end, it was very much like a wrestling match where you need that pace, you need that flow. And then when we built up, and it is a longer action scene towards the end,
Yeah.
it's earned. And you're like,
Yes.
I've been kind of craving this. So I do like, because there was a moment in the middle where we kind of flash back and we deal with a lot of backstory stuff.
Right.
That stuff was slower and good. Again, there was a lot of stuff. I think I saw a hilarious tweet about it where you don't realize how much you love establishing shots until they're not there.
Yes.
And this movie will throw you into a place where you're like, where am I? Who am I with?
Yeah.
Can I get a shot of a building?
Can we get a wide shot, please?
Yes.
Can we just pull back?
Yeah, so I think, again, those technical issues, but if you go back to Reservoir Dogs, Tarantino's first film, it's not as polished as some of his other work.
Right, of
Which I
course.
think Pulp Fiction is somehow messier than Reservoir Dogs. Reservoir Dogs is a little tighter.
Okay.
Pulp Fiction really ambitious, which kind of reminds me of this. Really ambitious. I think he took on a lot. I think
Yes.
Dev Patel wanted to talk about a lot of things. He wanted to film a lot of things. I know he had a lot of injuries on set. He broke his hand after his first fight scene.
Oh, wow. Okay.
Saw a great interview that he broke some toes.
Oh, man.
He's great. Like,
Yeah.
He fully went into it. So, I think what you said about the heart is why I can excuse some of the flaws. Is it's not a soulless production.
Right.
There's a heart. There's a soul. There's the conversations about gender identity in the Indian community. There is conversations about politics and religion. And I really love the mother-son story.
Yeah.
I think all those stuffs really kind of weigh it out as opposed to just being like, I'm Dev Patel directing a movie.
Yeah.
Let me pay off the checks that I've earned. He didn't do it. He didn't need to make this movie. He could have made a far more family-friendly, Amazon Prime rom-com with him and
Sure.
Issa Rae. Oh, which that was already Kumail Nanjiani. That was already a movie, but it could have been exactly that plot. And great, he could have banked his money and then did this movie second. But doing this first, I appreciate that.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely has, like I said, a lot of heart behind it. It does, to me, feel like maybe he bit off a little bit too much. Especially for a directorial debut, and especially for this style of movie that is, one of those hyper-violent movies where it's a lot of action. It felt to me as if he tried to put in maybe too many ingredients, and that if he had stripped it down a little bit, it would have flowed a lot better, and it would have kind of been more focused and targeted on a particular audience as as opposed to just feeling like he's trying to get everything into this one movie.
Yeah, I would have stripped out the political stuff, which I know is very personal to him. I understand India's going through kind of its own, every country is going through their own political shift moment where we're all dealing with it. But I think giving the villain kind of this, like, I'm running for this office thing, cluttered up a little bit. I like the revenge stuff, like, the burning down the village and all that. I think that was the inciting incident. You make sense, but him being attached to, like, the big government thing, I was just like, sure. And then there's the religious stuff that's also there that I'm like, I guess all of this is kind of intertwined, especially in India. It seems like religion and politics are one and the same, which kind of here too. I guess that is just an everywhere problem. But yeah, so I think it's interesting. I do think that's like one of those things I would take stuff out, but I feel like you can't, because then it's like, well, you take this out, so then this loses meaning. And it's just one of those kind of complicated things where there's a lot of moving pieces that I take it as it is. When I can't really place one thing I would take out, I kind of go, then it's supposed to be there. Then it may not be for me. It may be a little messy. But again, some movies can be messy. I think one time we watched, a lot of Christopher Nolan movies where every shot is planned in advance. He's drawn out the storyboard. And I love that, and that's great. He's just won fucking best actor, or best director, and best picture. Nolan's great. But sometimes I need the anti-Nolan. I need a kid to be like, no, we're just going to shoot this.
Yeah.
I need that. And so I like that that's there. I like that Dev Patel kind of had that thing, because he's going to get jaded as a director, and then the next movie's going to be like, I have to do establishing shots now. Yes, you should. But, fine. I always love, you talked about underdog with wrestling. Dev Patel kind of came into this a bit like an underdog, and I think proved himself as a worthy contender.
Yeah, absolutely. And you know what, I will touch on as well, we're talking about the establishing shots and all of that. I think that it could have been, and it felt almost as if like that was purposeful to give you this almost claustrophobic feeling where everything is just so tied up on the characters at all times, not just in the action, which is a crutch that a lot of filmmakers will use, where they don't want to show you exactly what's going on, so they punch in real tight and use shaky cam and all of that. But he was also remaining in these tight shots even in the more simple scenes or the more emotional scenes.
Yeah, some of the dialogue between him and I wouldn't say love interest. The female kind of lead in this movie. There was a lot of shots where they were just talking, and I'm like, I'm in Dev Patel's face right now.
It's right
like,
the whole time.
And again, it's a nice face. I don't mind. Most of the people in this movie, I'm like, I don't mind being on this beautiful woman's face, like the kind of evil woman running the thing. I was like, I love her. I don't need to be up in her nose. So yeah, it's just hit or miss. Again, overall, I gave it a 4-star. I think it's like, and again, it's the ambition. If it wasn't, I'm a film critic who is always like, if your budget's lower, if it's your first film, I'm going to kind of grade you on a curve a little bit. I'm very upfront with that. If you're a $400 million movie, baby, I better not see a single flaw. And that's why I'm so hard on a Marvel movie, on a Dune. These things that I'm like, you have the money. There's no excuse. Dev Patel, there was an excuse for me. So I rated it pretty well. Would you recommend people check it out?
Yeah, absolutely. I think if you are an action movie fan, even though it's not exactly like John Wick or Extraction or any of these other
Nobody's the other one I can kind of Atomic Blonde.
If you do enjoy that kind of like ultra violence, I think you should absolutely check this out. Or if you just want to support a filmmaker who is up and coming in that kind of creative outlet, I think it's pretty remarkable for someone's first at-bat. So I'm very curious to see what he does next.
Same thing with First Omen with Arkasha Stevenson. First time role doing a bigger, she's done Channel Zero, a couple episodes of that. I love seeing these directors kind of come out this weekend against Adam Wingard, who is established, still not, Adam Wingard's not on the level of a Nolan or anything. He's not, but he's a name. We know you're next, all that. So to see them kind of come out and go, Adam Wingard, Dev Patel, Arkasha Stevenson, this is like, young directors, new names. This is what we wanted to see, and we're getting it. So go give them some money.
Absolutely.
Again, I'm not trying to tell you to go see a Godzilla movie. They don't need the money, but they need the money. Go help it out. All right, we're going to take a break and get back to what the show's all about. What should we watch tonight? All right, we are here for our main subject. What should we watch tonight? That's the whole point of the show. So kind of why I conceived this is I know a lot of significant others, a lot of people who are hanging out, or, I went to the barbershop and talked to a guy, and he was like, oh, what should I watch? That's a question a lot of us hear.
Absolutely.
Oh, babe, what should we watch tonight? Oh, oh, bro, what are we going to do tonight? I love that, and that's why I kind of came up with this thing. And one, people get suggestions from us now. We're going to do, I have a newer suggestion, you have an older suggestion. This is kind of how it's going to flow. What is your suggestion of what we should watch tonight?
Okay. Well, first off, I love this idea for a segment, and I know you, and I know your style, so I already kind of have an idea of what types of films you're going to recommend.
Yes.
So I had to reach into my kind of core of who I am as a film lover and maybe aim a little bit in a different direction.
Yes.
So what I'm going with is a movie that is celebrating its 20th anniversary this month. Wow. It is a movie that was filmed entirely in the Tampa Bay area. It has a pretty remarkable cast.
We're about 15 minutes away from like one of the big park scenes in that movie, too.
Absolutely. It is the 2004 masterpiece, The Punisher.
Yes.
Yes.
I have not seen this first one. Thomas Jane, right?
Thomas Jane.
Yeah. I've seen Punisher Warzone more.
Oh,
because
wow.
it's the bloodier, crazier one. It's more my style.
Okay.
Worst movie.
Yes.
Bloodier, crazier, less good Punisher. But yeah, I have not seen this in a while. Why would you suggest we should watch this tonight?
So now, okay, I do want to preface it with this is not an incredible film. It is an early Marvel movie from 2004. This is back when Marvel, the comic book company, was going through trying to avoid bankruptcy and were selling off different properties. They sold off Blade, they sold off X-Men, they sold off Fantastic Four.
Spider-Man, they sold off the rights to Sony.
Yeah.
Like, that's why Sony is a House of Spider.
Yes.
Like, they made a lot of money off that, but...
Absolutely. And so this was another one of those situations where Marvel was just trying to avoid going bankrupt, and they sold off the rights to the Punisher, Thomas Jane, who I love. For better or for worse, I love Thomas Jane. And they, got him looped in. Of course, John Travolta as well, playing the villain in the movie. Initially, the story was supposed to take place in New York, as most Punisher stories would. But when they brought on John Travolta, he didn't want to leave home. And so they relocated it to the Tampa Bay area. So it's a movie that is fun for locals to kind of spot different locations that they shoot at. It also has an interesting story as far as the whole revenge plot. You know, we just talked about Monkey Man and that kind of story of someone.
Punisher's like an OG revenge tale.
Absolutely, absolutely. And in that regard, you really get to see, Thomas Jane, I think, does a fantastic job in this role. You get to see him playing all different aspects of this personality, where it's at the beginning of the movie, him with his family, being a loving father who is retiring from military service, and then, of course, goes through an incredible tragedy, and you get to see how he reacts to that, and then just becoming this cold, calculating killer and, spirit of vengeance, essentially. And so it's got a lot of that satisfaction that you would get out of a movie like that. Of course, you also have Rebecca Romaine Stamos in what would be her second Marvel movie in 2 years.
That span, yeah.
Yeah. And also, oh man, I forget his name. He played Angel in the X-Men movie. He is
Ben Foster.
Ben Foster, who is an amazing actor. I love Ben Foster.
One of the most underrated talents we've ever had. He did this movie a couple years ago where it was like a boxing movie in like World War II set. I'm like, that should have been an Oscar contender, and it just poofed out of nowhere. Like, so good.
I once said in a review, I think it was for 310 to Yuma, which has Ben Foster as well. And I said Ben Foster could play a brick wall, and I would believe him. Yeah,
no, he's one of those, like, he kind of reminds me of, what was his name, in Paul Dano, where another one of those actors that I'm like, when he's in a role, he's that role, and you just, the opposite of the, what was I saying earlier, with the actors that you can't see past. So those are the actors, like, a Paul Dano, a Ben Foster, they are those roles. I love those kind of actors. I don't really remember The Punisher a lot, to be quite frank with you. I was more of, don't hate me, I was more of a Daredevil fan.
Okay, that's fine.
Because that Evanescence song ate up my life.
Oh my goodness.
Very Hot Topic goth EJ was into that. And now I'm just kind of wishing we had the MCU earlier, of like seeing Thomas Jane, seeing Ben Affleck, seeing Nicolas Cage as Ghost Rider. Kind of these actors that we had, we would have had Tobey Maguire at that time. These are really good actors.
I know, we were spoiled. And
we were, and same thing with the Fantastic Four cast we just talked about earlier. These were characters that all could have came together, in the X-Men as well, which one of the most brilliant castings ever. I mean, that X-Men cast, even Hugh Jackman's too tall for Wolverine, blah, 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 but he's Wolverine. Like, that 90s Marvel, or the 2000s Marvel, they had it. Maybe the movies weren't quality. I think we look back at them now, and they are very early 2000s, so that's why people are like, oh, the MCU's better now, and I'm like, I don't know. Fantastic Four made me feel things back then. Like, I felt something, and, Punisher as well. Is there something about Punisher that you think still works? Did you like the John Bernthal version? Did you see any of that with the Daredevil show?
I mean, I think John Bernthal is an incredible actor as well, and is made to be that character. And Thomas Jane now is obviously a bit older, so it wouldn't
Yeah.
quite work the same. And I know he did a kind of like a short in 2011, which was where he played Punisher again, and it was called, I think, Dirty Laundry, and it was amazing. And that is what the 2004 movie should have been. Unfortunately, there's all the interference and everything, but I think Punisher is a great character. I think it's a character that's almost timeless. It's someone that people can kind of get that aggressive release of energy and that kind of fantasy of what would you do if someone took your family from you. So something like what we see in John Wick nowadays, that was kind of originated in a lot of ways with these older Punisher stories. So I think, is it a perfect film? Absolutely not. John Travolta is ridiculous in the movie.
He is at an 11. I do miss when John Travolta was in movies and was at an 11. Even if it was bad, he was still in it and was still giving something.
Yeah, but I think it's a fun movie. There is so much lore to the actual creation of the movie. There's a famous scene in it where the Punisher is fighting this giant Russian who's played by a wrestler who I don't know his name.
I remember at the time.
But there's a moment in that fight where the Punisher stabs him in the chest, and of course it's a prop knife that retracts into itself when you stab. Well, he grabbed the wrong knife, and it was a knife that was just a full-on knife that was there for close-up shots, and stabbed this wrestler right in the chest. He no-sold it and continued the shot, and then of course they had to stitch him up afterwards. So there's just all these great stories to how this movie is made. There's a extended director's cut on DVD, I think probably on Blu-ray as well, that has all of these extra scenes and footage. It's just for someone who has come up in the Tampa Bay area and who has come up loving comic book movies, it's a must-watch.
All right, my suggestion.
Yes.
What should you watch tonight? There was a couple ones I was tossing around. I saw The People's Joker recently. It's the Vera Drew parody of the Joker through a trans woman.
Okay.
She's a trans woman, and she is retelling the Joker story, but through her life story.
Huh.
It's weird. It's mostly shot on green screens.
Okay.
It's weird. It's not for everyone, so that's why it's not my suggestion. It's a little too out there.
Okay.
But man, she talks about her coming of age as a queer person was the Joel Schumacher movies. She was saying it was, which same. Mine was Chris O'Donnell with the socks. In love. Fell in love.
Amazing.
She said it was the opposite. Was the scene where it was Nicole Kidman on the rooftop in Forever, and she was like, all my friends wanted to be Batman, and she was like, I wanted to be Nicole Kidman in that scene, and I was like, loved it. So hearing someone talk about that in a movie was great. No, my actual suggestion to kind of go with the Satan theme we were talking about earlier, Late Night with the Devil, a IFC film which is going to be on Shudder in a couple of weeks.
Okay.
So you guys can find it on Shudder. It had a small theatrical run, did really well. I think it's IFC's biggest theatrical opening weekend.
Okay. Wow.
It made $1 million or something. Yeah. But it's a smaller production. If you are a David Dastmalchian fan, you may know him as Polka Dot Man. He was in The Dark Knight, which I always forget he's in The Dark Knight.
That's right.
I mean, one of those character actors who has been a character supporting actor for far too long. Right. So this is his lead role. He plays a 70s talk show host in a public access show, but he's doing really good. He's behind Johnny Carson in the ratings. He's slipping though. So he brings on it's the Halloween episode, so brings on a possessed girl.
Oh.
He doesn't, no one really believes she's the possessed girl. And they interview her, and wacky shenanigans unfold, and it is shot like a 70s movie. It feels much like The Omen was, this feels like 70s public access.
Wow.
Now, it got some criticisms. People were mad. There were some interludes of let's cut to commercial break. You know how the title cards come up?
Sure.
They are AI-generated title cards. Some Letterboxd reviewer was like, I'll never watch this movie. There's AI in it. If you're anti-AI, there's 2 seconds of AI movies in title cards that, maybe they should have just hired a graphic designer to do it. But I truly didn't notice my first viewing. I just know people were real pissed about it online. Yeah. I really suggest it, though. Not even just for horror fans. It works. It's good. If you like 70s movies, good. And David Dastmalchian, who is.
Yeah, I've heard a lot of chatter about this. It looks interesting. I'll have to check it out for sure.
Yeah, it came out the same kind of weekend as Immaculate. So it kind of got, or around that time, so it kind of got lost where Immaculate really ate up the Satan conversation, which I will say, First Omen, I think is better than Immaculate. Sydney Sweeney's.
Yeah.
Real pretty.
Real pretty.
Gorgeous gowns. Great gowns, to quote Aretha Franklin there. Real pretty.
Getting a lot of spooky movies.
Yeah, the least convincing nun I've ever seen in my entire life. Wow. I was like, girl, nunning who? And what porn? Love her though. She's good and she's getting better, I think. But again, so seeing kind of her blow up there, and I really thought Late Night with the Devil should have got that love, but it did really well. It is going to be limited theater run, so it's probably out by now. Shudder, that's where you can find it. That's where I spend a lot of my time is finding old 80s movies. Wait till I give you Sleepaway Camp or something that you will truly be shocked by.
Incredible.
But Late Night with the Devil is a good start to go if you're looking for something. So from what Shudder said, I think like April 24th, around that time, April 19th. Check it out, mid-April, Shudder. If you guys have an AMC Plus as well, watch it, guys.
Awesome.
All right, let's get to our wrap-up. All right, Tony, we are wrapping up our first episode. It's going to evolve. We're going to change sets sometimes. We're going to do stuff. Yeah. But I had a really good time talking with you about movies. We have another episode we're about to shoot right after this. I cannot wait. Tony, thank you so much for joining me. You want to say anything to anybody?
No, thank you so much. This was absolutely wonderful. I had so much fun doing this, and I can't wait to shoot our next episode.
Oh, we are talking about, we'll give them a hint, we're talking about Challengers. Whew.
Oh, boy.
Yeah, we'll get into it. Tune in if you guys want to see us. We'll be on Flickering Myth. We are on TBCN, so if you're in the Tampa Bay area, we will be playing on your local televisions, and we're going to be wherever you listen to your podcast at. Check us out. Thank you guys so much for tuning in, and let's talk about movies that you guys want to watch tonight.